Welcome everyone to the Tech Town Hall. I want to call it Tech Town Hall 2.0, but it really is the same show from last year that we are moving into, just a new forum. This is our first episode and brand new, not only for PTZOptics and HuddleCam HD, but for a lot of people kind of in our ProAV and broadcast space. This episode, we will be talking about Dante, and specifically the Dante AV-H platform, and why PTZOptics is launching a brand new camera called the Link 4K that is going to be Dante-enabled. The announcements for all of this will be coming out very soon, so you'll see more and more information about the product line as we launch it. And so what we are doing today, we brought in Steven, who you know and love from previous episodes, as well as Josh Thompson, who is one of our installer integrators with Haverford Systems. He was actually on to talk about audio with us in one episode. Now, because Dante is an audio-specific and audio-based platform from Audinate, or at least it has been for some time, that just recently added video to the platform, we're bringing him back on the show to talk to us all things Dante. Josh and Steven, welcome, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Doing well.
Doing well.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us again on the first episode for 2023. Let's just jump right into it. Dante, what is it? Why did we adopt it for PTZOptics? And what does that mean for the future of ProAV? Josh, we're going to throw you into the hot seat. Starting out with you, sir. Give us, we'll call it the brief synopsis of Dante, if you could give us the Dante elevator pitch.
All right, so the 10-cent tour is Dante is this great audio platform that's been developed for many years, especially in the integration industry of use. It's the ability to provide audio through your network, just bringing it across any structure that you have. It's a routing mechanism to allow one microphone to go to one speaker or one recording device, some DSP somewhere across your network, anywhere in your building. Now, Dante has introduced this crazy idea of, let's not just take audio and send it that way. Let's also take video and send it the same way. So it's a low latency video feed that's going to go anywhere you decide, as long as you have a in point and an out point.
Got it. So basically, more or less, just AV over IP, right? Is there anything deeper that we need to discuss on that, or is that kind of just like, if you have no knowledge of Dante, we now say Dante, it's just basically AV over IP?
I mean, that sums it up really quickly. There's some deep technical sides as far as clocking and things like that go. But for the most part, if you have Dante equipment, you plug it into one endpoint on your network, you send it through a routing mechanism. It's called Dante Controller. It kind of looks like, remember Windows 95 had that mastermind game where you click the little boxes? Same concept. You click the little boxes and you route your audio from one point to another.
So if you were any good at Minesweeper in the 90s, Dante AV-H is for you. That's what we've learned today.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, so Dante is now, obviously it's new for them to adopt video. What do you see are any complications with adding video, or is it just going to be the same thing now, just with the capability of adding video as another endpoint?
So far, complications with the video is, I believe it's only limited to 1080p. That the thing that you're going to run into the most is your network and making sure you know how to manage it. Make sure you have at least a 1 gig network flowing. I'm sure a 10100 is going to be limiting some of your bandwidth more, giving you a little bit less of a quality of an image and audio transferred through it. However, everything is it's kind of predetermined. So whatever you send to it, it's going to decode, encode, send from one side to the other. Hopefully with a lossless signal, low latency.
Fingers crossed, as always. I mean, it sounds like, so we've had multiple discussions about NDI, just because PTZOptics has lived in that broadcast side of the world for so long. one of the reasons we're actually adopting Dante AV-H is to kind of break into this proAV space in a bigger fashion. Not to say that we don't exist in those spaces, but we really have been used for broadcast. So we always talk about some of the best practices that you can have for NDIs, like start with your network, know your network, have a strong network. You mentioned at least 1 gig. It kind of sounds like as you're starting to add more devices onto any of these network-based solutions, you obviously have to have a strong network to start with. So we'll say our first best practice, hey, start with a good network, and you can kind of build on that. Now, if people decide to go the Dante route as opposed to the NDI route, what are some other best practices that you can think of or that you've ran into working with Dante in the past?
So I guess one thing that one best practice is to keep your network QoS separate. Allow Dante to have whatever it requires for its traffic. Allow, in the past, I've run into some issues with Dante audio and NDI on the same network. They're getting better at playing well together. I don't know in the real world scenario if they still fight each other a little bit. So if you have the ability to separate those out with your QLAN and maybe even some VLANs, that helps a lot. I think just keeping those two away from each other at the moment is probably the key, unless they fix that.
Yeah. Well, I know. So our Link 4K camera that we're launching very shortly here, if not right before this video airs, the biggest issues that we've ran into are the fact that we can't put Dante and NDI on the same camera at the same time, because they do just battle each other more or less. And it's simply just because they're speaking 2 different languages, right? One's Dante and one's NDI. So yeah, I think at the moment, you really do have to just make the choice. We're either going NDI or we're going Dante AV-H or Dante Big H. We'll get into that in a minute. So yeah, I think I have talked to people that have been able to, for lack of a better term, jury rig a network to get both to talk to each other a little bit. But really, it's just kind of like one is handling video and one is handling audio. And that's kind of the important reason about why we adopted Dante as well, is because, if you have an existing Dante system, no longer do you have to figure out some patchwork to try and get video through as well. You can now just simply use Dante controller to go ahead and pull that video feed in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I think is pretty cool. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a new space for us, so it's something we're always looking for new markets. We're always looking for new verticals and newer and better technologies to adopt to allow people the option to use whatever it is out there that they have. Now, I don't know how much you might know about this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. There are effectively 2 different Dante platforms, very similar to the fact that we have NDI-HX and then NDI-HB, or high bandwidth. Talk to us a little bit about the differences between Dante AV-H and Dante, I think it's just Dante Big H, or high bandwidth, if you're familiar.
So I don't know a lot about the 2 differences. I know the Dante AV Big H is in reference to like H.264 and H.265, which are encoder profiles for your video stream. I don't know if there is even a Dante AV little h, but Dante AV is its own protocol that's allowing you to send audio, video, I even believe USB control over, or USB signals over one IP stream.
Got it. So that's my fault for the confusion. I thought it was like Big H and a little h, but you're right. It's Dante AV and then Dante AV-H. And I guess that Dante AV-H is what has enabled the video side, because H.264, H.265 are actually the video compressions that we use on PTZOptics.
Yes, they are.
Conveniently enough. So, given how quickly things are developed, and this probably is a question for Audinate, but let's speculate while we're here. Why not? Do you think that there's going to be a world in which we could use Dante for full 4K in the relative future? Or do you think that's a little bit far off at the moment?
No, I don't think so. I truly believe that given some time and letting them figure out some of their encoding profiles, we'll be seeing ultra low latent 4K signals being sent across the network with no problem to be included side by side with any of your audio that you need to send across your network. I think the opportunities are limitless.
I like that. We'll take limitless for 200, Regis. Perfect. So that kind of wraps up the portion of the questions that I have.
I got a question.
Is there?
I got a question.
From the
He's the expert.
from the cheap seats.
Well, so the question I have is, for those that are out there like myself who have studios and have adopted the technologies out there, the RTMPs, the NDIs, the SDI, the HDMI, why would somebody in a studio like this want to go to a Dante? What are the advantages of going to, say, Dante over any of the other platforms? If there is any at all?
So I think, I don't know particularly for your studio, Stephen, if it does you a world of good, but I would think House of Worship, any of these very large, like I guess the Tweeter Center doesn't exist anymore. Probably called 10 other names since then. But any of those areas that you have this robust network, the beauty of Dante and Dante AV is its scalability. You can have a camera across the stadium far in the distance and just quickly queue it up using their very easy to use matrix style software. And you've already adapted Dante audio, and Dante audio has been around forever. Now NDI doesn't have NDI audio, but the world of Shure, Sennheiser, Yamaha, they're all doing Dante audio systems, and all of the digital signal processors, well, not all, most of them accept some form of Dante audio. So now you're adding a video to the mix of a world that you already have integrated of audio.
So essentially, I could take like a DAW system, right, and put little commands inside of it and trigger it through Dante.
That I don't know about.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some sort of API out there that will allow you to make your triggers happen for you.
I guess I'm just thinking long term, like, because if it's better audio, like you're already saying. I mean, Dante's been around forever, and I want to switch my studio over to Dante from analog audio. I guess I'm just trying to weigh out. I'm sure people watching this are going to be wondering, like, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Have you ever, have you come up on anything that's kind of like something that's going to be a non-starter in the sense where people really have to re-engineer their whole studio?
I haven't come across that. I think as long as you have a decent network running through your building, which is what the standard is nowadays, a 1 gig network is really something that everyone or most corporations have now. Mm-hmm. As long as you have access to a network drop and you're already using Dante audio, why not include Dante video with it? That's
a good point. That's what I was kind of wondering.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because I was wondering that. I mean, Will, try to do something like this. I mean, it's a little daunting, no pun intended. But you sit there in your studio and you're going like, I got something that works. Like, but I'm always looking for an advantage, right? What's going to make my video and audio better? What can I possibly do? And so, from what I'm hearing, this is definitely a step that I may want to take, right?
Yeah, it's. Yep.
Correct. No, I think, excuse me. I think Josh had a good point in the middle there. one of the reasons we really looked at Dante as a platform and why we're going to bring it onto the PTZOptics line is scalability. I think there's a world in which PTZOptics, or not a world in which, but we very much were part of that like DIY community in the past, and something like Dante gives us the ability to start to work into larger and larger installs. And because of that scalability, when we did a lot of discovery about Dante and from a sales standpoint, a lot of the people that came up in conversation were like stadiums, full corporate buildings from the top down. We're talking like, 40, 50 floor buildings that are all on the same network. And then, larger live event facilities as well, because, the Dante audio side has been so prevalent, maybe, in the past. Now that they're adding video, we can start to build out those bigger and bigger systems. So I think that's, when you talk about advantages, I guess just from my knowledge of it, it's less like to do with the specific user and more to do with like the potential of the project. If that makes sense.
I would have to think that the music industry has widely adopted Dante audio. So for them to make the switch over to using our cameras with Dante video is like a no-brainer for them, right?
Yeah,
I would say so.
I think if you're already using Dante audio, it's a no-brainer to switch to Dante video. And the beauty of it is, it's going to be more cost-effective in the long run. You're not going to have to pull any new cable structure. So, I'm sure, Stephen, in your studio, you're using some form of SDI for some of your cameras. You don't have to pull that new coax cable. You already have this existing infrastructure, and that's what it's all about. It's about adapting to what you already have.
Well, and that's why I was asking what I was asking, because I know there's a lot of people out there that probably have that question, like, what do I need to do? And I think mentioning about isolating the network, I mean, that's something that I've seen that a lot of people that have adopted and Dante have suggested to do. And from what I'm hearing, that seems to be like the only thing that you really need to do. And I mean, I've seen with NDI, if you isolate certain things too, it works better. So I think it's just a network thing to isolate things like that, right?
Correct. Yeah, isolation is key for any network. If you have a computer that's requiring more power than any other device on your network, you want to give that priority. Same thing's going to be for what you're doing in your production. You want to give the devices that need the most attention the most attention.
Yep. And you can do that in a
there
router.
You go. Another best practice.
Yeah, there's a tip for you can clip. I do that in my router. I have when I'm broadcasting, if there's certain times that I'm broadcasting, my router allows me to prioritize devices. This way, if my kids are home and they're doing something on the network or the internet or Netflix, whatever, I get the bandwidth. It's definitely something you have to do.
Yeah. Josh, one quick question, because you've worked with Dante a lot more than either Stephen or I. What is an interesting application that you've seen used for it, or what was one of your favorite installs that you've done using the Dante platform?
So in my integration time, obviously Dante AV didn't exist at that moment. So for audio wise, I think usually like a school stage production is a good example. That style of an environment. You have drop ceiling microphones that come down out of the ceiling right above the stage. They're all feeding a Dante controller. They're just network plugged in. You have Dante makes these, or whatever company you choose makes these wireless microphones that talk to a base station. It's plugged into a network jack somewhere in the room. They all communicate, and I can't push the software that they're using enough. When you plug in your Dante device, it shows up in the little grid, and the output shows up in the other grid, and you can have multiple outputs across that grid. And all you do is you say, okay, well, I want this microphone to feed, output 1, output 2, and output 3. And now you've been able to split one source across multiple platforms and send it in multiple directions. Those are some of the neat things you can do with Dante.
Got it.
And hopefully that'll come along with Dante Video.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just putting a Dante-enabled camera on a Dante system, it just pops up as another endpoint. So in that controller, you don't have to go, searching for it or whatever the case may be. That actually brings up a good question that I'm sure people have. With NDI, you have to go in and you have to set like static IP addresses, and there's a little bit of like networking side of it. Can you speak to how much networking knowledge one would need to set up a Dante system, and what does it really look like to say, "Hey, I have an existing Dante system. I now want to put a camera onto that system." What does that process look like?
So there's going to be the basic user that doesn't need to have a lot of Dante knowledge or network knowledge, and then there, obviously you're going to get into advanced. So I'll speak just to the basic user. In my experience so far, it's literally plugging in the device into the network, and it populates in their software. And from there, it's just routing it. There's not a lot of it's more plug and play than you would think. It's when you start running into some difficulties that you might have to, do a little more research, because there are clock leaders and timing that's involved to synchronize everything from one source to the other. But hopefully, and for the most part, when you plug it in, it's ready to go.
Nice. I mean, I guess end users aren't going to hate that. And then lastly, because we did talk about it briefly, what are some brands out there that you've seen that have really taken on Dante AV? Like you mentioned, Sennheiser, Yamaha, a couple others. Are there any other Dante products that you've seen that you think are really, really cool, and why?
So again, because Dante AV is new, I know our cameras, the Link 4K is coming with Dante. I believe there's a few other cameras on the market that are going to be competing in that same space. But the audio market is where it's coming down to. I think Shure produces a product that I think is really fascinating to work with, and I don't have the model number off at hand, but it's essentially a small touchscreen with one single gooseneck microphone, and it communicates to a base station, and you can have, I believe it's up to 16 of these little touchscreens sitting in front of you, and you can actually do polling on it. So you can ask a question, it pops up on the screen, and it's for that city council style group. Mm-hmm. And you can say, hey, I vote yes or no, and it sends it to all these devices through Dante, and you submit your response, and it sends it back to the PC that's running the software, and you can watch your list and your percentages flow through. I think that was probably one of the coolest ones I've seen that they made.
Was this what you're referring to? This video conference remote system from Shure?
That is not.
That's
I
not.
don't know
Okay.
what that is.
It came up, so that's why I pulled it in. I'll see if I can. I can't find it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's a bunch of different devices out there. And again, it's so funny because we've seen just in the last like 7-8 years that we've been doing the PTZOptics stuff, how much the world of like networking and IP and proAV and broadcast, they're all just blending ever so slightly together. And I guess Dante is just kind of the new frontier for that, or the next hill, we'll call it, for the AV over IP space to expand into. So yeah, again, from a sales side, we're really excited about it because there are so many different applications out there. There are so many different verticals that we aren't even in. One of the big ones we discovered is like industrial manufacturing. Apparently, they use a lot of Dante audio. So yeah, it's. I think it's pretty cool, and it's kind of a new frontier for PTZOptics as a whole to explore and get into. And obviously, we come from the install integrator background, which is what Josh was doing prior to working on the product team for us. So. We definitely have some in-house talent that knows about Dante, and that's kind of, again, one of the reasons we adopted it. So I'm super excited about it. I hope everyone else can be. Gentlemen, do we have anything else that we want to wrap up on? I think we kind of gave it a good base. Obviously, there's so much more we could dive into from a technical standpoint. But is there any thoughts that you guys have that we haven't talked about yet?
Nothing I could think of. I mean, Josh, you were pretty thorough on that. You convinced me, that's for sure.
Glad I could help.
Yeah, so it's the you just brought it up, Stephen, the Shure MXWANI8.
Is that would be the correct one because I'd like to pull that up if that's the case.
So the Shure MXCW.
MXCW. All right, let me see if I can't find that.
Wireless conference unit with loudspeaker and touch.
Oh, wow, that's okay. It's like a conference unit here. This thing here.
Yes.
Let's see if I can pull this out.
And that was the coolest one I did. We put that in at a city council, and that's what it was used for, was polling and allowing each council member to vote on whatever discussion they had at the time.
That's pretty cool.
I like that.
And all completely wireless at Dante.
Wow. Well, we got to call up that city council and tell them that they can now put cameras into that space for recording and streaming purposes. And they don't even have to change their infrastructure. So I'll get that number from you when we get offline here, so I can make that phone call. Anyway, I think that kind of wraps it up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us to discuss the new world of Dante that PTZOptics is breaking into. Again, we're super excited to see what comes of it. Most importantly, for anyone out there watching, by all means, please get engaged. We want to hear what you've done with Dante. If you have any cool products or if you have any cool installs that you've seen or done in the past using the Dante platform, by all means, pop them into the comments down below. Or you can always reach out to, as always, partners at PTZOptics.com. That goes to myself and my team. We'd love to hear from you guys. Also, any criticisms about the new forum that we've developed. Just as a result of everyone kind of moving around and shifting into the world, we've decided to adopt this platform. Moving forward, we're going to start to bring in different, we'll call it different people, different experts into the conversation as we start to develop more and more topics using the Tech Town Hall platform. Again, my name is William Goldie, the global head of sales here at PTZOptics. If you're watching this, by all means, please hit the like and subscribe button down below to get all of the updates of new content coming out. Steven's got a show that he does. We have 2 other shows that we're in development right now that we're going to start to launch here hopefully shortly. So we're just going to create more and more content for you guys to get involved in. And if you have any suggestions for content, by all means, please reach out. That's why we're here. We want to hear from you guys. Gentlemen, Josh and Steven, thank you so much for joining me. Again, this is the Tech Town Hall. We will see and hear from you soon. Thanks, everyone.